name is Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
Thais Gibson.
I hope I pronounce her name properly. Thais Gibson.
I am so excited for you to be here with me today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Nicole. Really excited to have this wonderful conversation with you. I love the topic and the notion that anxiety can actually be very much affected by our diet, our lifestyle, our gut health, so many of these different arenas of life. So before we dive in, do you mind just sharing a little bit about your background and how you got really passionate and interested in this industry to begin with?
My whole passion and panic is to prove to myself that we can actually heal from anxiety. Because growing up, that wasn't the conversation. The conversation is you manage it and it's just a fact of life. And I didn't see how that made sense. You know, you fall down and you scrape your knee, your body's going to heal that, even without you paying any attention to it. And then as we've expanded our awareness of neuroscience and the brain's ability to heal and the nervous system's ability to rewire itself, it just didn't make sense that we couldn't heal anxiety. So I've been on a mission for more than a decade to figure out how to create a relationship with panic and anxiety that actually promotes healing. And so my background is I studied psychobiology in college, which is the science of how our psychology, our emotions, and our brain can be impacted by, and then, of course, impact our biology. In college, I did research, and it was from a very sort of scientific biochemical angle. And then I went and I did oncology research at the Baylor College of Medicine. And I was like, gosh, I don't know if I want to be a researcher. I want to work with people. So I decided to go to counseling school. I went to school in Chicago. I got my master's in clinical psychology. But there's a moment. Can I tell you about this moment that changed everything for me?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm working in Lake Forest, Chicago. So it's a northern suburb of Chicago. And I'm doing group therapy with adolescents who are struggling with substance use disorders. And so the girl to my right, her drug of choice was cocaine. And so she's really dealing with recovering from that. And I remember this one night, so she's talking about her cocaine use and she has a caffeine drink. I don't remember if it was a Red Bull or a Monster or whatever it was, but it's 8:00 at night. She's drinking something highly caffeinated. She's using a stimulant drug and she's very anxious. And so in my mind, I'm kind of side-eyeing her and I'm like, I feel like there could be a relationship here between her habits, her lifestyle, and part of her anxiety. But there was a lot of bureaucratic red tape about what was in our scope as counselors, what we could provide education on, what we could do. And so we ended up referring her for the lifestyle pieces to a psychiatrist who then prescribed her a drug called Ambien or Zolpidem, which is a controlled substance that it knocks us out so we can go to sleep. And so now we have this developing brain who's trying to recover from substances, tons of trauma. She's drinking caffeine at night and now she's taking a controlled substance. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot be a part of this system. This is so broken. And I felt like I can't just sit back and watch this happen without doing something. So I was like, all right, girl, we got to make a change. So I got on Google, of all places. This was years ago. And I was in Chicago. I'm from the Midwest in the US. And I didn't know really much about complementary and integrative medicine. And I discovered a naturopathic medical school in Arizona. And within 3 months, I started school there. And the rest is history. You know, I studied medicine. I studied anatomy and physiology and pharmacology, and I shadowed under psychiatrists, and I got trained in EMDR therapy and had my own rock bottom moment. And then I finally that I needed back then. And that brings us to me getting to talk with you today.
Wow, what a beautiful backstory. I love how much in your journey you really didn't just focus on only the body or only the mind, but really the integrative approach between the two, because I think that's so important. And I love that you have such a rich background on both sides of things. That's super exciting. So let's talk about it. So before we go into that, you did mention just very briefly, you said I had my own rock bottom moment. So I can't let you glaze over that. Are you able to share just a little bit about what that was and what maybe the key takeaways were and how that actually transformed you in your own life to get to where you are today?
Yes, I am honored to share that story. I ask my clients and my community to be vulnerable with me so we can heal. And so I love the honor of being able to share that and be vulnerable with my story. And so there's a little bit, I won't tell my whole life story. I know you're not my therapist, but I'll tell you a little bit of context is I was raised in a Midwestern family that was very, very Dutch. And my dad was a Marine. And so there was a lot of seriousness and rigidity and authoritarianism and just not a lot of room for big feelings or really many feelings besides anger. And so there was a lot of that growing up. And when I teach about anxiety and panic is we want to look at our story. We want to look at our history and look at where our mind, our body, our nervous system, and our other organ systems, where they've adapted to try to protect you in whatever was going on in your circumstances. For example, you live part of the year in the north. And so when it's cold, you put on a big coat. And you live part of the year in the south. And so you've adapted to the south and the warmer climates, you take off that coat. Similarly, when we go through adversity and trauma, we adapt. But when our circumstances change or when life goes in a different direction, if we don't continue to adapt, it's sort of like going to the south with that big coat on. It can create its own set of symptoms that may have been helpful when you were in crisis, but no longer are helpful. So I entered life putting on this big fluffy coat. It protected me, but it set the stage for later. And so if we fast forward, when I went to college, I was on 6 different prescriptions for all sorts of things. I had congestion and allergies, caused lots of anxiety. And then so I was on sedatives. And so I had all these symptoms with medication, symptom medication, getting no healthier. And I also had this history of trauma, feeling unsafe, out of control. And now we have the body being modified or modulated by these medications. And then I go through medical school and I do really well with structure. So I was rocking it. I was like making calendars and paper with colored pens, having the time of my life. I loved medical school. But then when I graduated, I was building my own business and I was in a situation that for me wasn't healthy. The environment, the people that I was with, it wasn't healthy. And I went to bed at night and I'd be laying and I'm trying to go to sleep. And then I'd have a thought like, oh my gosh, you got to call Susie. She hasn't scheduled a follow-up. Or, oh my gosh, I should add 6 more people on this next week because I have this expense coming in. Oh my gosh, I forgot to do this. And then suddenly those oh my goshes started to occupy more of my night. And then the less that I slept, the more stressed I got about sleeping, the more anxious I got. And then it started a whole spiral. And then there's this whole fear of the fear, this loss of power. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so my expertise, though, my zone of genius is integrative and complementary ways to help people with anxiety. So I was like, okay, I'm going to use all the tools that I have. I know herbalism, I know meditation, I know Ayurveda, I know acupuncture, I know breath work, I know mindfulness, I know about pouring oil on your third eye, I know about prayer. I knew all the things, all of the tools to make my anxiety stop. And they weren't working. And I was like, oh my God, I'm an imposter. I'm a failure. And my symptoms were so severe, my friend. It was like horrifying. There was like burning under my chest, my stomach. I couldn't eat. I lost so much weight. I stopped having my period. And I was like, this is going to kill me. And it was horrifying. And in the midst of that, I made a life-changing and profound discovery. And that by trying to suppress my symptoms with all of the natural and pharmaceutical things I could get my hands on by relinquishing my power and control to the authority, the doctors, the experts, that in its mercy, my symptoms would rearrange themselves and find other ways to present themselves.
Yeah.
And that was my tipping point. And so then my whole mission since that point has been what I learned and how I healed.
Oh my goodness. I love that. And I love that you are able to, and what I hear in that is that every time you try to suppress the symptoms in different ways, your body would try to communicate again in a different form to get you to hear it. And so I love that it sounds like that big, profound discovery ended up being that you had to listen to your body in a different form. So I'm curious at what happened next. So you're doing all these things that in other cases might have helped, but where did you go with it to get to the place that you are now and to get more regulated and grounded? Did that become more nervous system regulation work or changes in diet? Like, what were those next steps?
One of the things I teach about is the obstacle to cure. And so when we look at what our symptoms are saying, just like you said, there are voices, they're trying to tell us what needs healing and how. And one of the things they tell us about is what could be causing our symptoms. And so for some people, they live in a mold infected house. And for other people, they're in an abusive relationship, or other people, they have a genetic mutation where they can't process folate. So
the methylation gene. Yeah.
Yeah, girl, you got it. Yes. I saw your eyes light up. That's such a cool topic to just dive into. I have like so many stories. And so obstacles to cure can be huge. And so what I was doing is I was focusing on what I can do or take to suppress my symptoms, but I wasn't looking at the obstacle to cure that my symptoms were telling me is taking place. And what it actually ended up being is what I hinted at in the beginning of the story, is that the work environment that I had cultivated was really deleterious for my health. So I had to move. And so there is so much power in a pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
And so while you're in an environment that's producing panic and anxiety, no matter what you do, in its grace and love and wisdom, your body will continue to produce panic and anxiety until you get out of that place that's making you sick. I had to move. And then all of the other stuff that I started doing, it worked. It was amazing. It was like that one piece of the puzzle.
I have seen this. So I worked in practice for about 10 years, and I've been in running our programs at the Personal Development School for the last 5. But I've seen that time and time and time again, which is your body will let you know until you actually change that specific situation that's there beneath the surface. So I think I just want to almost sit on that one for a moment for our listeners and dive a little more deeply into how can somebody, because the power of denial is strong and the power of not really wanting to look is strong as well. If somebody they have this sort of sneaking suspicion that they may have a version of that. First of all, how can somebody even recognize that who might be listening right now? If they're seeing all this distress in their body and they feel like, okay, I'm trying all these different external things and they're not working, how can somebody recognize what you just called the obstacle to cure?
Oh my gosh, what a profound question. And I think that the answer is, number one is practicing radical acceptance. And this is hard for me because I'm going to use a word that follows this, that most people, including myself, are going to be like, ooh, no, I don't like that. But I think that that's the first step. Is radical acceptance is in some senses hopelessness, that something is going to change. So if I'm in a situation that is harmful, and I'm like, I'm going to fight in this situation, I'm going to do what I can to change it. We're trying to have power, connection, and control, right? And so I'm hoping it'll get better. I'm hoping it will change. I'm hoping that this person or that person, that we can relate differently. But that isn't acceptance. And sometimes with radical acceptance, there will be situations in our life that we have to accept it is what it is. And that means that we're hopeless that will change. Mm-hmm. So while I stayed in a lack of acceptance about my situation, I was unable to look at it as a probable factor in my suffering and do anything about it. And so that's the first part. How did that land for you as it hit you? Because for me, when that like dropped in and I was like, nope. Oh, wait. Okay.
Well, I wasn't thinking of it in the context of my own life because I'm not sure if there's something, I mean, I'm sure there's always things that need or could change, but I was thinking of it from the context of the listener. And I was thinking that's such a hard thing to hear, but such a powerful thing to learn. And I started wondering what people would probably think when you said that. And I thought that there's probably a group of people that just hit so strongly and was so profound. And then there's probably another group of people that are like, yeah, but maybe it still could change, whatever that is, whether it's a relationship or their work situation, or maybe their own habits with like money or their career. There's so many different sort of aspects of life. So how do you come to the point for that group of people and say, here's how to determine that it won't change? So I'll give an example for why I'm asking. We have people in our programs, and I talk a lot about like relationships and attachment theory, attachment styles. And I tell them, like, if you're not sure that it's the right relationship, set a deadline. And in that deadline, pour everything in. So let's say you say, I'm going to give this everything I can for the next 3 months. Work on your communication patterns, work on your triggers, work on regulating your nervous system so you can approach communication and boundaries more effectively. All these things, do that back work, pour in for 3 months. And if the needle didn't move, you know that that's not the right person. So what about for those people who are still like hanging on in that moment? Because I really love this topic, and we'll go into some other deeper things in a moment. But what do you say for people who are still kind of hanging on by a thread, thinking, well, it could still change? Is there any sort of insight you have there for them?
I think that anything that changes is changeable. And the most empowering part of this whole conversation is, what do I need to do in my own process to be okay if this doesn't change, to accept that this may not change? And so if that's the case, maybe it will, maybe like you're saying, like I'm on the fence, maybe it will, maybe they'll change, but I need to come to a place of acceptance that it may not, and be okay with that. And so if that's the case, then what do I need to do in my own process to come to that place? Like, for me, I need to accept that the toxic dynamic that I was in, I needed to come to a place to say, like, okay, I accept that this is very likely not going to change. And am I okay living in that acceptance? Is that how I want my life to be? Maybe it will change, but I can't control that. So if I look at what I can control, that's how I relate to that. And so then in terms of doing that work, someone's listening to this conversation and they're like on that line, they're like, okay, I may accept that they won't change, but then what do I do? Is you got to do your inner work. You got to do the shadow work. You got to do the parts work. And we can have so much fun talking about what that could look like.
I love that. I think that's really, really beautiful. I just wanted to pop in here and let you know we are doing a 7-day free trial to the All Access Membership Pass at PDS, which means you get access to literally everything inside of the school. And this includes the 4 live webinars I do with our students every single week. And on top of that, you get access to all of our different courses. We have over 55 different courses on relationships, communication, boundaries, emotional mastery, guilt and shame, learning your needs, so many different facets that are really important to master our lives and feel really good about our lives going forward. And last but not least, there's a daily community event. We have trained facilitators and coaches who are in there doing that work, showing up to support you on your journey every single day. Please join me on the other side. Come check it out. See if it's a fit for you. I'd love to see you there. Go ahead and sign up by clicking the link in the description box below. So let's go back for just a moment. So you talked a little bit about the obstacle to change. So you're starting, somebody's feeling anxious. They have this background anxiety. Their body is now letting them know. So that first big step is like radical acceptance is what I'm hearing, which I think is absolutely beautiful. And then as they get into that next piece, do you start seeing their symptoms resolve at that point? Or do you start seeing, hey, there's some next steps that they have to take? And I'm curious if we can talk about those from both, I love all the parts work and the shadow work, but I want to talk about the physiological perspective as well. Like, how do you bridge with your expertise in this area? How do you bridge what we can do for our body and what we can do for our mind?
I love this. So I think about it as a 4-step process. And so when we accept, that means that we're not avoiding what kind of information is coming up for us. When we accept it and we lean into it, then the body doesn't have to shout anymore. So oftentimes, if we try to resist panic and suppress panic or whatever the symptoms, my heart racing, if I try to resist it, oftentimes that will get louder. And so then what happens is acceptance will put us into the first of the 4-step process. I call this the panic reset. And so step 1 is then calming the nervous system, because biologically, when we are in autonomic arousal or that fight, flight, freeze, that the brain switches into something that's called the default mode network.
Mm-hmm.
The default mode network is like your autopilot team. That part of your brain is ruminating. It's trying to figure out how to have control. It's feeling anxious. It's thinking about itself. It's very hyper aware of its own. It's kind of like driving your car down the highway on autopilot, and you need to take an exit, but you're like, nope, autopilot it is, right? And so that's when your nervous system is aroused, and it's really adaptive. So if your ancestors were gathering berries in the woods and they heard the roar of a tiger, if they're like thinking critically about it, like, I wonder what that tiger's doing, I wonder where it came from, it's going to eat you.
Yeah.
But if you can go into autopilot and just be like, fight, flight, freeze, run from that tiger, those are the ones that survive. So the brain will go into autopilot. And so if we can calm the nervous system, we start with acceptance, we go into nervous system calm, and we could talk about nervous system calming techniques like the breath, the vagus nerve hack, things like that.
I would love to, as we can break down. Can we break down for each step?
Yeah.
Suggestions for each one too. So just anybody listening is going, oh yeah, like I can start doing this right now. And that can be a key takeaway.
Yes, let's do that while we go through each of them. So in step 1, calming the nervous system. So you're thinking about your life. You're wondering, is there an obstacle to cure? Is there something that's going on? Is there something in my situation that may be getting in the way of me being really, truly free and living to my highest potential? All of that, right? Okay, so I need to accept that I cannot change the people, the situations, the elections, politics, climate. I can't change that. I accept that I cannot change that. But what I can do is I can change my experience in that. So I'm going to go into the body and I'm going to calm the nervous system. The first thing that you want to do is you want to elongate the exhale. This is something that's always with you. You could be at a board meeting. You could be doing a live talk. You could be picking your kids up from school. You could be getting ready to go to court. It could be anything. You could be in your living room. You could be taking a shower. Your breath is always with you. So the first thing you want to do is extend the exhale. And so you see kids do this. Have you ever noticed this yourself? When a kid gets really mad, they're like, oh, and they like bunch their fists and they breathe out really hard.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Yep.
The body knows, right? So you want to extend the exhale. And if you can put some force behind it or even some voice behind it, like I did, this activates your vagus nerve. And oh my goodness, your vagus nerve is your switch to feeling calm, getting out of that fight, flight, freeze. So if you can calm the nervous system just by elongating the exhale, that's amazing. But let's say some of us were like, I try sighing all the time and it doesn't work. What else you got for me? So there are other vagus nerve hacks. I teach people about a panic pack, which has all sorts of goodies that you can use. You got to carry it around with you, but if you're a person on the go, it has all sorts of goodies that go into the nervous system. So when we're in fight, flight, freeze, and our default mode team in our brain is on autopilot, you're not going to respond to logical things because we haven't turned that part of the brain on yet. That's coming, right?
Yeah.
So someone's saying, oh, calm down. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Think of something else. For most of us who are really quite activated, that doesn't work. We have to stimulate the brainstem. So maybe you've heard about the 3-3-3 rule for anxiety. And so if you're feeling really activated, name 3 things that you can see, name 3 things that you can hear, and even 3 things that you can touch. And touch is going to be really powerful. Like I feel like the ripples in my water bottle. I feel the cold water in my mouth. I feel the smoothness of my desk. I feel the softness in my puppy's fur, right? Yeah. So you go to touch, you go to taste, you can look at temperature. So it's all about getting into the nervous system. So those are a couple of hacks for calming the nervous system. Thoughts about that?
I love that. I think that's fantastic. And I think it's very tangible. And that's what I really want to create a lot of on the podcast is the ability for people to have these crucial takeaways. That's fantastic. Love it so far.
Yeah. My favorite fidget, for the record, is they make these they're like little, kind of look like a hair tie, but it's kind of small and spiky. So some people, they're really tend towards dissociation or like leaving their body and totally zoning out is something that may be a little more stimulating, like a spiky fidget or a cold pack. And there are chemical packs that you can buy online that they use like camping and first aid packs that cold works really well too, or ice. So those are a couple of other calm the nervous system step 1 hacks.
I love that. I love that. Okay. And what's our next step? What's step 2?
Step 2 is onboarding your wise mind. So remember, we talked about your default team. They're an autopilot. They're just running from the tiger. They've been just freaking out, not accepting. So now you've accepted, you've done the radical acceptance, you've calmed your body. Now we want to switch you into what the neuroscientists call your executive control network. And think of that as your executive dream team. Political, they make big decisions, they think critically, they analyze everything, right? So the research shows that these two teams don't work at the same time. When one goes on, they do their thing, and then you got to turn it off by calming the nervous system, and then your dream team comes on. So now your executive control network is kicking. You're able to really look at this rationally. Your amygdala in your brain, that big feeling part of the brain, that's not firing as much. And we could totally talk about what that whole biological process is because, oh girl, then we get into like gut microbiome and hormones and all that stuff, but stay tuned. And so right now we're onboarding our wise and analytical mind, right? And so now your amygdala is like, okay, we're calm, we're chill. And your prefrontal cortex, this part behind your forehead, this part of the brain that's very logical, will help you think more rationally. It'll help you make empowered choices. So ways to turn on your wise mind. Let's talk about some specifics. Yes?
Yes, would love to. And then maybe we can even share a tool or two. Like this is the place that we can start working through the problems from if we're seeing them. So yes, would love to hear.
So one of the ways to do it, so we want to turn it on first. And so once your nervous system is calm, you want to start thinking more analytically. And so one tangible way to do that is to count backwards. Another way to do that is to write with your left hand. Like try writing your name with your left hand. Another way to do that may be to do a couple of math problems. So some people are like, what's 2 times 2? What's 4 times 4? And so, you can keep it kind of easy because you're just warming up that part of the brain. You don't have to do like, what's 5 to the power of 300, whatever. Don't do that. Nobody should have to do that. And so now you've got your wise mind on and you're like, okay, executive team, we're all here. And they're like, yes, we're all here. And you're like, okay, now it's time to problem solve. So then what you can do is you can actually write down everything that happened, that what your thoughts, your emotions, and your sensations are. And this is what we do in EMDR. So this is a form of trauma therapy. And it will help you to bridge the gap between what's happening in your brain and what's happening in your body using your logical brain.
Yeah.
So you write down all of your thoughts, all of your emotions, and then all of your sensations. And then you fill it in with what are the circumstances that are surrounding that. So now you've got your logical brain on board.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. And will you just share for anybody listening, if they are in that profound state of anxiety and the default mode network is running the show and they're, trying to come out of it and switch gears into, their executive functions of their brain, what might they feel? So I could see somebody saying, how do I know that I've left one space and moved into the other? What would be some things that they would start seeing to know, okay, I got that first step 1. Now I've moved into step 2.
Oh my gosh, I love this. This is so fun to answer. So, okay. One thing that all you who are listening, I want you to do when you finish listening to this podcast episode, or maybe pause it and do this and then come back in, is I want you to do your stoplight exercise. And so what that is the green zone in a stoplight represents what it feels like in your thoughts, in your emotions, and in your sensations when you feel green and good and calmed and connected and relaxed and happy. And so if you don't feel that way right now, is try to remember a time when you did feel that way and write about that. what if you've never felt calm? Is maybe you can ask somebody else that's close to you what they experience, just to get some ideas. And so you might find like, my chest feels free and open, my arms feel relaxed, my muscles feel, they're not tight, they feel kind of smooth and strong. And I feel like maybe there's like a half smile and my thoughts feel nice and calm, but I can be creative. So you're going to fill out your green light zone. And then you're going to fill out your yellow light zone. And your yellow light zone is when you're starting to notice a little bit more stress and a little bit more overwhelmed. And if you can figure out how this works in a sequential order, that's going to be even better. We could totally dig into the sequence of symptoms. But when you get into the yellow zone, like what's the first symptom? So when you get a little bit stressed for you, what do you notice? Like, what's your first symptom?
For sure. It's funny. I've actually done this exercise in a different form, which is so funny. I put like 3 circles, and my inner circle is the when I'm feeling my best and I'm most in alignment, and then outer circle when I start to see my habits shift. And the ones that I often put in are that I rush more. So I'll that's like the first one that really comes online for me, is that I'll be like rushing a little bit more. I will feel myself. I end up agreeing to more things than I really should. And I'll feel like a little bit more like time speeds up, honestly. And I know that that's because I'm moving into that particular space. So those would be some of the ones that come up for me.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. And I love that variation that you do, because it works with the imagery of the window of tolerance, which is so cool. Oh my gosh.
I actually like yours better. I like the green light way more. I was like, I'm going to change that in my mind.
I love that. Please do. Please do. So for me, when I start to so I know that I'm going into a stress cycle when I feel like, I always gesture like between my throat and my sternum right here in the center of my chest. It's like, ooh, a little bit of tension there. And if I ignore that whisper of a little bit of stress, a little bit of overwhelm, like you, it may be because I've been saying yes to too many things and not protecting my space or my time, whatever it is then the whispers will turn into shouts. And that's the red zone. The red zone is crisis. And that crisis could be rage. It could be severe depression. It could be panic. It could be the worst migraine of your life. It could be so many things. But that's your body is like
communicating.
We're like really communicating quite loudly. And so then notice the sensations in the sequence of when they occur. And so some people, like when I was telling my story at the beginning, it was like burning under my skin, like someone took coals out of a fire. I've had people describe like electricity zooming through their head, brain zaps, numbness and tingling. And so when we're looking at what it feels like as you're getting back into that calm space, that executive control network, if you've done your stoplights ahead of time, and you know exactly what it feels like when you're there. And if you use these coping mechanisms and you already have them laid out in your stoplight strategies, then you know what to do to get back to orange, and then what to do, or yellow, and then what to do to get back to green. And then you can listen to the feedback from your body to say, okay, this is working. We can now move on to the next phase.
Love that. Love that. Love that. That's so beautifully laid out.
Thank you. It's a necessity of having gone through it and worked with clients.
So let's take a quick break for our sponsor. Have you ever signed up for a cell phone plan that seemed affordable only to be shocked by how much your bill ends up costing you each month? Because I know that's happened to me. And I feel your pain. Mint Mobile is here to recuse you from those unexpected charges with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. And when they say $15 a month, they actually mean it. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Plus, you can use your own phone and keep your current phone number too. Switch away from overpriced wireless plans and get 3 months of premium wireless access for just $15 a month with Mint Mobile. To get this new customer offer, go to mintmobile.com/Thais, Thais. That's mintmobile.com/Thais, Thais. There's a $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
So we've talked about acceptance,
Yep.
how to calm the nervous system with some practical strategies. We talked about onboarding your executive control team, and now they're logical. Talked about what it's like when you're in each of the colors, how you know when you're getting back into that wise, analytical, calm space. And now we're ready for step 3.
Beautiful. Let's hear it.
So this is so fun. And so step 3 is it's that body connection. So one thing that you and I were just talking about is a lot of times people are very top-down focused. They're very much like, what can I do analytically to change the way that I'm feeling in my body? And then other people are just focused on the biology. They're like, how can I calm my body and my nervous system? But this next step is awareness that there is a bi-directional communication between your body.
Yeah.
And this is all about meta-awareness. And so when you have meta-awareness, it's like being aware of your awareness itself, right?
Yeah.
And so let's talk kind of practically about this. So in this step, you're noticing like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit more calm. I'm in my analytical mind, and now I want to see if my mind can regulate my body. So here are signs that you need to practice step 3, which is that reintegration. Do you ever feel like maybe you're getting that feeling of time rushedness, even though logically you know that time is staying the same and it's fine, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You've experienced that. And I've experienced
That's like my yellow zone for sure, is what I noticed specifically. I'm like, oh, I feel like time's speeding up. I know that means that I'm not doing a good job of regulating myself right now.
That's a perfect example. Yes.
Yeah.
So you notice that you're like, okay, I'm in my yellow zone. And so that, and the fact that you're aware of that, it shows that you have that executive team. They're like, hey, we're kind of, we're sort of shifting into the default team before you go, just so you know, right?
Yeah.
And
definitely.
so you notice that. So that means that the mind and the body aren't fully integrated because they're doing different things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the body's like, all right, it's gearing up to produce some stress. And your mind's like, hold on. So what you want to do is you want to work with body regulation techniques, and there's tons of them. And I like doing these preventatively, but they work really well in the moment too. But what you'll notice is that all this work that you're doing with these 4 steps that we're learning today is that you're literally repatterning the brain and the nervous system. And I think about it like, imagine that you're at the top of a mountain and you pour water. Water's going to flow down the path of least resistance. And it's the same with the brain. And so if you've had all of these experiences, you put on this fluffy coat and you've been patterned to go down fight, flight, freeze, that's what's going to happen automatically. And so when you're doing these exercises, you're actually changing neuroplasticity. You're leveraging the power of your brain and body's healing ability. And so this process of reintegration is where you have that meta awareness. You notice, okay, I'm aware, I'm noticing this is what my body is saying. And now I'm going to breathe through that. I'm going to bring myself into a state of calm while doing that. So I'm going to notice that. I'm going to notice that feeling. So let's say that you get gut anxiety. And so somebody listening to this might feel like a sinking, like a stone sinking in their stomach. And their brain's like, wait, should we be scared? Should we be anxious? Is there a tiger? Right? So if you're in step 3, what you do is you notice that, you pull it up, and then with lots of love, you say, okay, part, thank you for telling me what it is that's going on. Thank you for sharing your suffering. I hear you. I acknowledge you, what it is that you need me to know right now. And then what you'll probably observe is that as you practice this, is that you'll get either a thought, a feeling, a sensation, or a memory. And so you acknowledge that. So oftentimes when we get activated, it's because there's something stored in our tissues and the symptoms are like, hey, we got to clear that. So you notice it, you acknowledge it, and then you will timestamp it. So you'll say, okay, I hear you. I want you to know that I have resources you didn't have. I want you to know that I can take care of you. it's whatever year. You and I are recording this in 2024. So you say it's 2024. I've got this and I'm here for you. And so you notice what the body is saying, and then you give it the data of the present and your resources, because it's very possible you have a past part of you that's getting activated. So now you're kind of
Bridging
having bridging the two. Exactly.
Will you, for anybody, I love this work, I'm quite familiar with this, but for anybody listening, will you just give a specific example? So let's say somebody is feeling, we can do one together. Let's say somebody is feeling anxious, and maybe they're anxious about their boss at work, let's say, and they're anxious about, what their boss might say to them, or, what's coming up. And they find themselves, they're sitting on their couch at home and they're just feeling all that sinking feeling in their stomach, and they're feeling anxiety. Could you walk us through what that might look like for that person, just as an example for anybody listening?
Yeah, I call this the 3-minute hack. Okay, so you're about to go in and you're about to have a meeting with your boss, right? And you're like, you're sitting there, you feel this gut anxiety. So if you can do this in your office, awesome. If you need to go to a private space like a bathroom, or maybe go sit in your car for 3 minutes. And then you set an alarm on your phone for 1 minute first. And then you just allow yourself to marinate and become fully aware and in full acknowledgement of the data that's coming from your body. Because I guarantee you that most of us are like, where's the kava kava? Or where's the Xanax? Or what? Just tell me to elongate my breath, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to set an alarm for 60 seconds, and you're just going to notice it. And you're going to acknowledge it, and you're going to hold space for it, and you're going to receive it. And then you're going to ask it. You're going to set the alarm again for 60 seconds, and you're going to ask yourself, when is the earliest time I remember feeling this way? Mm-hmm. Because my bet is that it's not just about the meeting with your boss, because you have different parts of you. You have a part of you that is a total badass, right? She's going to go into that meeting with the boss. She's going to hold her own. She's going to have radical empathy. She's not going to take things personally. She's going to know that boss is going to have their own stuff. It doesn't reflect on her. She's got this. She's in control. She's powerful, whatever, right? So you're going to send the alarm for 60 seconds, be like, when is the earliest time I felt that way, right? And then very likely you're going to have a thought, emotion, a sensation, or a memory come up.
Yep.
And so then you're going to set your alarm for a last 60 seconds. And then you're just going to simply talk to that part. You're going to be like, I am strong. I am confident. I'm in control. You don't have to be in this meeting. I've got you. You go relax. It's 2024. We're going to do this. I've got you. Don't worry. And you're going to exhale, and you're going to soothe. You're going to imagine golden light coming into your body, whatever it is that you need to soothe that part. And then you're going to have the alarm go off. You're going to walk out, and you're going to be in your amazing self. What will help you? Can I throw one more thing in there?
Yeah.
What will help you is if you can practice being in your badass. And so I have a part of myself. And when I used to teach, I taught at the medical school, and I have an image. I'm wearing like a hot pink blazer. I'm teaching the students. I'm like, yeah, I know my stuff. And so I do meditations on that. And then I do an anchor. So when you meditate and you own that and you kind of marinate in that part of yourself, if you squeeze, so I always was taught to squeeze the knuckle on your hand, on the left hand. If you squeeze and breathe and notice that part, you're installing that into your neuro tissue, so that when you do that 3-minute hack and you go into the bathroom and you talk to that younger part, that you can activate that badass, and then you can go from that centered place to that meeting.
That's beautiful. I love that. And for context, for anybody listening, usually what people are going to see when they get to step 2, after like fully going into that presence and awareness for a minute, they get to minute number 2, they're usually going to see that their boss maybe represents all the times they felt yelled at by a parent as a child who was authoritarian, or there's going to be a lot of like these pre-existing experiences for people. So that's why I think it's so powerful. And then I really think of your step 3 there as being, then we can give to ourselves what we didn't get, which is that ability to realize like, hey, you're safe, everything's okay. And so I think that that's such a beautiful framework that you shared for actually going in and giving our body and mind an opportunity to express itself, and then actually being able to show up for ourselves in ways that maybe we didn't know how or couldn't as perhaps young children, because some of those experiences coming up are often going to be all the way from back in the day in our early life experience. So absolutely love that. Please tell us step 4 of this process.
Oh, I just love, makes my heart so happy to get to hear you say that, because girl, you are so trauma informed. You're amazing. So yes, I love it. So now we have the opportunity to intentionally retrain panic producing patterns into powerful patterns. And so this is something that you're going to do outside of an activated situation. This is like, I'm going to run a marathon. So I'm going to be going and I'm going to be doing my daily runs. This is like maintenance. This is helping gear you up to be panic proof. And so what we want to do is we want to put your mind, your body, and your nervous system in autonomic arousal in a safe and controllable way. And Bruce Perry talks about this in his book, What Happened to You, which stands on the shoulders of Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score. I think these are people who largely influenced the way I see things, is that when we go through trauma and adversity, especially when we feel powerless, like you were just saying, you were little, you were yelled at by an authority figure, it was really scary. And so what will happen is the autonomic nervous system, it's almost like starting a car. And so the starter goes and it's like gearing up, but then it flatlines, right? It can't quite turn over. And so then what happens is we go into what is called somatic reenactment. And somatic refers to the body, and reenactment is the body is trying to save itself again and again and again. So it's replaying what happened to you. That big coat is on, even though you're in the South, right? So what you want to induce that somatic reenactment process in a way where you can control it, because it's all about giving you your power back. So here are some tangible ways to do that. So a high ropes course. For some people, that can be kind of stressful, right? So you get up in that high ropes course, and it is objectively safe, assuming you're going to a good reputable source, right? And you are in control, because you can decide, like, I'm done. I can get off of this high ropes course and I can go home and eat ice cream. You're in control of that. And so producing situations where you have control and where you can go on that rope and click in, or that rock wall, that autonomic arousal, fear producing state, and you can successfully get across that rope or climb to the top of that wall, that is corrective. That is showing your brain that we can go into fight, flight, freeze, and we can take ourselves out of it.
Yes.
So those are two tangible ways to do that. Another way to do that is horror movies for some people, which blew my mind when I did an interview with somebody whose expertise was leveraging horror movies to help people. Horror movies always make me feel worse, but some people, they're like,
that's not my thing.
They're like,
but it makes sense, because you're giving yourself that I have the sense of control, and so you can come full circle, take yourself out. That it does make a lot of sense, honestly.
Yeah. I'm like, man, I think I would rather do a high ropes course, or like anything that, even doing the sprint burst exercise where you walk on a high incline in a treadmill, maybe like a 12 on the treadmill at a speed of 3, and your heart rate goes up, and then you flat road
yourself
slowly.
back down. Yeah.
Bring yourself back down, because it's the same thing when your body is excited or running from a tiger or panicking before a meeting with your boss. The biological process is largely the same.
So
that's step 4, and you can get creative with it. Make it your own.
This has been fantastic. This has been so wonderful. I'm so excited for our listeners to hear this. I think this is amazing. I love that you gave such practical tools, clear examples, broke everything down for everybody, gave the scientific evidence to back everything up. This was amazing. So tell our listeners what you're up to next and where they can learn more about you.
I needed this information a decade ago, and I found that in my clinical practice that I was repeating myself again and again and again, and I was like, I just need to put this in a book so that anybody anywhere can access it for however much the booksellers sell it for, like 20 USD, or maybe you could get it on at Goodwill one day, right? So all of this that we've been talking about, I put in a book, and it's called Panic Proof, and it's coming out 2024 in October, and I'm so excited. So if you resonate with this, I'd love it if you buy the book, and you can also connect with me on Instagram. I love to be in there and supporting you, and I always add, like, this interview, oh my gosh, it's going to be so valuable for the world, so I'll add that in there. And you could find me at Dr. Nicole Cain, Cain.
Beautiful. We will put that all in the show notes for anybody who's interested. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your experience, and hopefully we'll stay in touch and maybe have you back one day soon.
I would love that. It was so fun. You're so brilliant. And I just really want to honor you with everyone listening and the work that you're doing and the hard conversations you're having. Like, this is the stuff of life. And I really honor and see and value you.
Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Share it with friends and family who are on their journey of personal development and growth. And thank you for listening. Next week, we'll be back with more insights to guide you on your journey. And until then, keep practicing our tools and strategies to change your subconscious mind and apply some of the powerful learnings from this podcast so that you experience real life transformation.